Hello, and welcome to Season 6, Episode 6 of the Virtual Coffee Podcast. I'm Bekah, and this is a podcast that features members of the Virtual Coffee community. Virtual Coffee is an intimate group of developers at all stages of their coding journey, and they're here on this podcast sharing their stories and what they've learned. We're here to share it with you. Here with me is my co-host, Dan.
Hey, Bekah, how's it going?
Hey, it's fantastic.
Yes, we are in a silly mood because we just finished recording with Julia Seidman, developer, educator. She's an independent consultant, and she's had a really long and interesting career, a couple of different roles. And it was a really good time. It was a very silly time as well. So we had a good time talking to Julia, as always.
We did. We had a deep dive into our intro question. So I think that we have set the record for longest ever intro because we explored quite a few tangents.
Yes. But we learned some things along the way, right?
We did some very, very interesting things about exploring different technologies as developer educator and what that career path looks like.
Mm-hmm. And
also about rhodium. You gotta listen to the end of the episode though if you want to know about rhodium.
Julia has a really great outlook on pretty much everything. She talks a lot about how education is important in her writing process, and she has this I don't know if it's a ethos or whatever, but she says embrace the Careen over the career, right? And I as another person who I never thought about it like that exactly, but very much appreciate that look on life. I think it's a very healthy one too. So I don't know. It was a good time and it was fun. So I'm horrible at ending things. It hasn't gotten better.
I think that's probably my job to pick up with. We start every episode of the podcast like we start every virtual coffee. We introduce ourselves with our name, where we're from, what we do, and a random check-in question. And we hope that you enjoy this episode. Our intro question today is, if you could have an unlimited supply of one non-food thing for the rest of your life, what would it be? My name is Bekah. I am a technical community builder at a... It's not what I normally say.
What?
I don't know. Hi, I'm Bekah.
It sounded good.
But it was like, that's just not what I normally say. And then my brain was like, what are you doing? This is not how we do this thing. All right, brain.
That's what my brain does every time, except that there's not a normal thing that it's supposed to be doing.
Well, that's because you don't know what you do. You're very confused about.
Same.
Hi, I'm Bekah. I'm a technical community builder at Deep Graham from a small town in Ohio, and an unlimited supply of one non-food thing for the rest of my life. I don't know where to go with this. I really like notebooks and pens, but that's two things. So, but should it be like practical, and does it just automatically appear? Because like I for a long time kept forgetting to buy light bulbs, and so we were in the dark all the time. So, or like AAA batteries. I'm just
fun.
In non-food items. All I really want is food.
Always have AA's, never have AA's.
Yeah, exactly. Or like that one time you need a D battery. I'm like, what the? No, I don't have a D battery. So I don't.
You want to show your kid what happens when you lick a 9-volt and you don't have 9-volt.
Am I supposed to show my kid that?
I don't know. I feel like it's a rite of passage.
Yeah,
I don't even understand what that. I've never heard of that.
Go try it. See what happens.
I don't have a 9-volt.
I don't know. My dad was a science teacher. We did a lot of questionable things.
Dry ice is really fun. You can do. My dad was a pharmacist. I remember like sometimes he would bring home dry ice. I don't know, like something shipped in it. I'm like, this is the coolest thing ever. I'll just go with dry ice. I'm going to have an unlimited supply of dry ice for the rest of my life. I don't know what I'm going to do with it, but that's what I'm going to go with.
All right. Well, you'll have lots of steam, or well, it's not really steam, is it? It's
the chemical
steam.
process is called sublimation.
Yeah, but what is the thing called that it
It's
sublimates?
steam. It's when a solid
It's steam.
goes
Okay, it is steam. Okay,
with
yeah.
gas. Yeah.
All right, cool. Hi, I am Dan. I do stuff. I am an independent computer person, developer guy. Yeah, from Cleveland, and yeah, I think time is what I'm going with. That would be the thing that I'd have.
Oh, that's not fair. That's cheating.
Not fair at all.
Listen, it's not food. That's the only. That was the only rule. All right, fine.
I mean, time is infinite, Dan.
But I don't have an infinite supply of it.
Well,
see,
you want free time. That's what you're asking for.
I want more time.
You want to live forever?
No,
I would.
No,
hate
that
to live
doesn't
forever.
sound good either.
Yeah,
Yeah, no. All right, fine. How about? Can I sell the thing? Is it?
Sure.
Can I do? I mean,
no drugs. You can't sell drugs.
Can I do
Nothing
money?
Illegal.
Nothing illegal. What is this? You're putting all these rules in that didn't exist.
It was in the fine print.
Gold. What are those things called? Doubloons. Yep, that's it.
Balloons, like
yep, like a pirate. And then I'll sell them when I need more money and infinite supply. Yeah. Okay. It's the most practical way to transport gold.
What is happening?
Yeah, and I could fill up a pool and go swimming in it, Scrooge McDuck style. I could sell them, when I needed more money for things. I could probably make jewelry out of them. The blooms,
Listen, just for reference, we are recording this on a Thursday at 1:30 Eastern in the afternoon. We are not even like to a point where we should be having these conversations.
I went home for lunch just before this and opened my fridge to get a soda and definitely took a hard look at the beer. I chose not to today, but I was like, it's been that kind of week. I took a look at it, so I decided to wait till later. But I actually got my first full night's sleep last night in, I don't know, at least a week.
Oh, your brain doesn't know what to do with itself now.
I know. I have lots of energy today. So anyway, me and my gold doubloons are gonna, that's what we're gonna do.
Good luck, Julia. It's your turn.
Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts now. My name's Julia Seidman. I am. I don't know. I guess lately I've been calling myself a developer educator. I'm kind of mainly what I do is I work with API companies to create sample apps and getting started guides and tutorials and generally help them improve their developer experience. With specifically with an eye towards onboarding new developers, but also trying to create content that inspires creativity. So I write code, and I write about code, and yeah, if I had an unlimited supply of something, so I was gonna say sunscreen because I compulsively buy sunscreen in enormous quantities. Every time I see it, I'm like, oh, I should probably buy more sunscreen. But I don't ever actually remember to use it. And I'm imagining that if I had an unlimited supply that just materialized, then maybe I would actually remember to use the sunblock and I would stop spending so much money on sunblock that doesn't get used. But then I thought, there are rare earth metals that are much more valuable per ounce than gold.
Yeah, but do they come in the blooms?
Sell the thing, and especially if I could have rare earth metals without the environmental costs of mining them and like the child labor costs of mining them and all of that, then that'd be really good. So I think, I'm not sure which rare earth metal. I have to do my research. But that's what I'm thinking.
Nice. I thought of another answer. Energy. That was my one. Yeah. Because I could sell that too, honestly. But I could also, power all.
Oh, I was thinking
my battery things
to get through the day. You're thinking
of personal energy. Oh no, I meant like
solar energy,
electricity.
Yeah, well, not doesn't have to be electricity, just energy. I can convert it into electricity if I want. I can convert it into probably other things.
Can it make you fast?
Well, no, but probably could power a thing that made me fast. So yeah, that's it. That's got to be the real answer.
Excellent.
I do want to know where these things come from, because
I want to know
it's
where
like unlimited supply
or unlimited earth.
Well, is it an unlimited supply? I mean, yeah. Does it mean like you were asking about this too? Does it just like one appear when you need it, or is it like?
Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, it's
every
it has
time
to be like that.
Yeah, that's what I was imagining. A closet.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. So they don't. Yeah. So nobody's mining them or making the sunblock or whatever.
Yeah.
Right.
As far as I know, manufacturing sunblock is not like
we need Kirk on this.
Particularly environmentally costly, but
we should. That should be our last episode of the season. Should just be Kirk questions that we answer.
Oh man, Kirk, if he was there for that, would just have an aneurysm, I think, by the end of it.
So if you are listening and you have not experienced a Kirk question, when we do these questions before every virtual coffee, Kirk has been coming up with some doozies, I guess you can label them, where it leaves a lot of room for interpretation and requires you to think outside of the box, which is a rabbit hole for most of us.
Yeah. I hold a little bit of blame, potentially. I don't know. In that one time in the co-working room, I pulled out a copy of Would You Rather questions for 8-year-olds.
Yes.
And there have been a few that were inspired by Would You Rather for 8-year-olds.
Is that a book?
It's a book.
Oh.
They have them for 7-year-olds, 8-year-olds, 9-year-olds. I don't know what the difference is. But
my
I'm writing that down.
Kid has a birthday in a couple weeks. He's about to be 8, and he would love that. So this will come out after his birthday. So in case he listens, it will not be spoiled. I think this is the record for our longest intro ever.
Sorry.
No, don't be sorry. It was all Dan's fault.
No.
I even held back on a story about gold doubloons.
Wait, you have a story about
gold doubloons? Now I want to hear it.
Yeah.
Not about gold doubloons. It's about gold Krugerrands.
Wait, what are those?
So it was a currency in South Africa, like, I don't know, historically. I'm not sure when they stopped using them. But they are, I guess they were kind of popular among, like, people doing like black market kind of stuff pre-internet age. And we had a super corrupt governor in Connecticut when I was growing up named John Rowland. And John Rowland had like a couple of cronies in my hometown. And one of his, I don't know, partners in crime was the father of one of my sister's classmates. And he was arrested while my sister was in high school. And in my mind, they actually caught him in the act of burying gold Krugerrands in his backyard. I don't know that they actually caught him in the act, but for sure, my sister went to high school with someone whose father was arrested and found to have hundreds of thousands of dollars of like illegal South African gold coins buried in his backyard. So
That is incredible.
it
I
is
like that.
truly
This is what I'm talking about.
bizarre.
It's so much of a better story than if he just had like cash buried in his backyard, you
Oh,
know?
totally. Well, there was that
Yeah.
guy from Louisiana who had cash in his freezer. This guy, way
Big
more
guy.
interesting.
1.5 inches.
Anyway,
Yeah, they're like this quarter, like a little bit bigger than an American quarter, I suppose.
are you looking it up?
I'm looking at them on Wikipedia. So
Okay.
by 1980, they accounted for more than 90% of the global coin market and was
Wow.
the number one choice for investors buying gold.
Yeah.
There you
But
go.
they're like, I think they're
They're not
kind of like
doubloons, though.
untraceable, you know.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't know.
Yeah.
This is
Anyway.
where we need sound effects for like the more you know. Is that how it goes?
Yeah.
We
Nope,
learned.
I don't have that one. All I have is
That is
that's all I got.
not what not the vibe I was going for.
All right. So these are cool, but yeah, doubloons, I feel like I need them to be bigger and thicker, you know.
So you can
Oh.
wear
You know what I mean?
them.
Oh, you
Well,
can wear them. You could do, you know,
but
you know what I mean?
Careen's like they're a lot more portable than like a big brick.
Oh, I get it. I mean, I understand practically like these are good for crime and stuff, you know. But
These are good for
I'm saying
crime.
for my thing, you know, this is why I want if I have an unlimited supply of them, I'd rather just, you know what I mean? If I change my mind later, I can just melt them down and make Krugerrands with them.
True.
Yeah, all right.
Okay.
Well, that was our podcast. Thanks for coming, Julia.
There's no segue here. So thanks for coming on the podcast, Julia. We like to get started with your origin story. And maybe that's where it starts, with gold coins in backyards. But give us your story of how you came to this point in your tech journey.
Totally. So when I was in college, when I was in college, I double majored in anthropology and comparative religion, which is not useful in any commonly known sense of the word. But I had a dean who I knew she was actually, well, anyway, I knew her pretty well. And we were talking one time and she said something about how she had decided to embrace the Careen over the career. And I just really liked that phrase and idea. Like, and I would say that that's kind of what I aspire to, is like, I can't plan. I'm no good at committing to any like long-term vision. But what I am good at is rolling with the punches and like just kind of seeing where things go. So after college, I bounced around for a few years working as a professional fundraiser, as an events coordinator, really briefly as a recruiter. And then I spent like about 4 years working in finance, which was just a total, like, I just stumbled into the job. They had hired somebody else who went to the same college, and they were like, let's hire her. Let's see how it goes. And I really liked it in some ways. I really liked the sort of the analytical work. I liked that I was learning a lot because I had no background in finance. I did a lot of writing while I was there. And if I kind of look back at like what's the theme in my Careen, what I would say is that what I do over the long arc, I learn about things and then I write about them. So at that phase, I was learning about finance and writing about finance simultaneously. And that was great for a few years. But then in fall of 2008, winter of 2009. I don't remember. I don't know if other people remember this time as acutely as I do. I live in Seattle. WAMU collapsed. I worked in finance. Everything else collapsed. We had people being taken to the ER in the middle of the workday because they thought they were having heart attacks, but it was actually just panic attacks. It was such an intensely stressful time that I was like, peace. I am out of here. I do not want to work in this world anymore. No one is happy. And so I went back to school and did something that was probably as far in the opposite direction as you could go. And I became a high school English teacher. I did that for about 10 years. And then just kind of got exhausted by the vagaries of working in public education. It's another story for another day, but I worked at a very high pressure, in a very high income, high pressure community. And I was really not happy with like the way that my students' lives were being shaped. So when my second child was born, I was like, I'm going to take a break. And I took a year off and it felt really good. And so I took another year off. And during that second year, I started learning how to code. I started kind of more with data science because of having the finance background. But along the way, kind of stumbled my way through various things. And I did a boot camp. I did some self-taught stuff. I did some internships. I did and kind of a incubator program, and then stumbled my way once again into this role that I'm in now, doing developer education. So once again, I'm learning about things and then I'm writing about them. So yeah, that's my origin story. And I think it's good because I finally found something where like there's really no limit on how much I can learn. And I have a ton of control over who I work with and when I work and all of that. And the people that I am teaching through my work really want to learn. They are intrinsically motivated, and that's cool. Yeah. So that's me.
Yeah, that makes such a difference when people are motivated to learn.
It's huge. It's huge. And like you get that sometimes in K-12 education, right? Like I don't know. I'm sure we all had times in our education where we were really genuinely motivated by something, but there's just so much else going on that I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't love it.
Right. My background's in education. I taught college English for 10 years, and it was a lot of core classes, which means people had to take those classes. It wasn't an option. Most of them did not want to be there, didn't see the point of it, weren't motivated, and like to the point of being aggressively unmotivated and like angry about things. I'm like, this is not why I signed up to teach. And like the rare occasion I would be able to teach like a special interest class. I taught a screenwriting class once. I had 8 or 10 students. It was the best experience. I loved that because everybody was excited about being there and talking about those things. But those experiences are not as frequent.
Nope. No, they're not. Yeah. And yet, I mean, the people who stick with it and do it for a long time, and I mean, I have enormous respect, but I also don't at all judge anyone who opts out because it can be pretty demoralizing.
Yeah. And I think that I don't know if it's a generational thing or not, but I know my parents stayed in careers forever. And a lot of the people around us who are in the same generation, they spent their entire careers, doing one thing. But I see more people now, maybe just because I'm older, n- changing careers and like
Yeah.
not having to be stuck doing something that you're not interested in doing is really important to me. So I know, like, I would talk to somebody else about a career in tech, and I was like, I don't know if I'll be here 5 years or not. She's the same thing. Like, yeah, I don't know if I will either. I kind of hope I'm not. Like, there are lots of options out there, and exploring those things that keep you interested, I think helps you to, I don't know, be motivated in all areas of your life.
Uh-huh. Yeah, and that's something like when I kind of made the transition into tech, I was pretty explicit in saying like it's not that I think I'm going to be writing code all day every day for the rest of my life. This is a skill, um a it's a skill and like a discipline that can feed other kinds of growth,
Yes.
that can enable me to get involved in different things. And I think initially I thought of it more as a skill, and now I would say it's really is more of like a discipline. Like there's not one skill that that anybody learns except maybe, and I think that this is part of like what has helped make me successful in the time that I've been working in tech. Maybe the skill is just learning how to learn.
Hmm.
Um, like, and I think that that's like, if I kind of what I'm good at, like, I'm good at learning about stuff. And that's, I think, probably the most essential skill. Otherwise, like, it's not like you could say, like, oh, I have a skill in writing JavaScript. Like, that's not, I mean, there is skill, but it changes. And really, the skill is about like habits of mind and um, I don't know.
Yeah. I love that. And I think I also always struggle with people asking me what my career goals are. And I think that's for like a lot of this reason. I don't really have career goals. Like, I'm interested in, connecting other people. And like you said, like learning new things. And so for me, it's not like, oh, I want to be a senior, blah, blah, blah someday. I just want to keep doing things that I'm interested in and helping to support other people, feel part of something.
Mhm. I mean, I think it's cool when people have those
Oh,
aspirations to,
yeah. Yeah, I
you know.
think that's totally fine. I just think that there are so many different career paths and ways to approach what you're doing that, like, acknowledging that I'm interested in learning or learning new things now, that's a really great place to be too.
Mhm. Mhm.
So let's back up a little bit and talk about what you do for work. Um,
Sure.
just to give like more of a zoomed in idea of what you're doing daily, or how the projects get chosen that you're working on, and talk through some of the things that you like about that.
Okay. So I'll just talk about what I'm working on right now because I think that's a good sort of snapshot. um, right now I have 3 main projects that I'm working on. 3 different clients, 3 different sort of types of work. One is like an API tooling company. And I am a frequent contributor to their technical blog. So I just wrote a 3-part series on authentication and authorization and authentication best practices for APIs. So I'm not writing code when I'm doing that, but I'm doing a lot of in-depth technical research, reading code, reading documentation from different, um, I don't know, different solutions providers, I did an SME interview as part of that with a senior engineer who oversees some of their security stuff at my client's company. And then writing those articles like for a technical audience, writing for API developers to say like, here's how to approach the decision-making process. And that was one of the things that I try to do as a writer, and like part of why they keep bringing me back there is that there's a lot of repetitive content out there. So if you look up like API security best practices, you're going to see a lot of articles that say essentially the same thing. Anytime you look up anything to do with JSON web tokens, the first hits are the same. Like everything is so SEO optimized, like, and what I try to do is to take a point of view that's a little bit more about like, okay, there's a lot of options. There's not a best option. How do we come up with a decision-making framework? Like, how do you as a developer, as a team lead, a product architect, whatever, how do you approach the decision-making process of like, what's the best option for me? So that's kind of part of what that series is about. And I've done things like that on other aspects of API design for them. So that's one thing. And that's kind of the least technical part of what I do. Then right now I'm working with two other clients. One is they have a GraphQL API that coordinates the APIs for like maybe, I don't know, just estimating 40 different brands of IoT devices. So like your Schlage smart locks or your Philips Hue light bulbs or your Ecobee thermostat or whatever. Each of those has its own API and its own app. And as a homeowner, you can use like Google Home or whatever. But let's say that you were like an apartment building superintendent and you wanted to be able to manage all of the smart devices in your buildings from one place instead of all of those places. They make an API that coordinates all of those things. And but right now, most of their documentation is very like marketing oriented. It's like they've been very focused on just like onboarding their first few significant customers. And their technical onboarding has been like super intensive, custom, like hand holding. And I'm involved in helping to transition them away from that, like creating more standard documentation for like those getting started guides. So how to build a Node app that allows you to control all of your smart locks, how to build and then eventually like integrating all of these different things in there, but also along the way explaining like, why is this a GraphQL API instead of REST? Why do we insist on you using a specific authentication protocol? And there are technical reasons that they do all of those things that have to do with coordinating between 40 different APIs. So the content that I'm creating for them, some of it is just creating these sample apps and kind of documenting the nitty-gritty of those apps. And then some of it is the more in-depth explanations of like the why of how it works. And that's been really cool because I've gotten to learn a lot about these different aspects of it. Plus, I think IoT is really interesting. We have everything in our house is smart, is like a smart device. And it frustrates me that they don't talk to each other very well.
Yeah.
And it's, yeah, I think it's cool. It's a really exciting, interesting project to be working on. And the engineers who work at this company are like, they know their stuff. Like, they are very smart people, creative, analytical people. So it's been really neat working with them. And then my other client that I'm working with right now, this one is like simultaneously an example of what I do and really, really, really do not like about my current role. So this is a company who makes a player engagement API for game developers. So, sending push notifications and rewards, in-game stuff. And I'm creating a lot of the same kind of like getting started guides. Because again, like their existing documentation sort of assumes that you already know what this thing does and roughly how to use it. Like, maybe you've already been using a competitor product and you're just switching over. And so it's not going to be any challenge but they're hoping to expand and kind of make themselves more accessible to a broader audience of game developers. So to do this, to create the content that they want, I have had to learn how to work with game code. And
right.
It's not at all the same. It's like the transition from working with a REST API to a GraphQL API in Node is no big deal, right? The transition from working with one authentication protocol to another in .NET is no big deal. But changing this entire framework and way of thinking about project architecture has been really, really difficult for me. And it's just not easy to troubleshoot. And it's, it's been interesting. I mean, it's cool to be learning and working on something so radically different. And I hope eventually I'll be able to create some content for them that's useful and meaningful. But it is definitely something where I'm like, oh, there has got to be somebody else out there who's better qualified to do it. It's sure not me. But it's kind of the nature of like, there aren't an enormous number of companies that do what our company does. And I'm technically a freelancer, but almost all my work right now is through an agency. And there just aren't that many agencies that do what we do. And we had a sales guy for a little while who was maybe overselling our technical expertise, or like overselling the idea that, developers could learn anything and, in no time flat. Yeah. But so that's the kind of thing, like, I don't know. Does that answer? Is that a good answer?
Yeah, this is great. I mean, you really broke down a lot of different things. Do you get to choose the projects and the companies that you work with, or does the agency assign you?
So when I first started working with them, it was really just like kind of one-off freelance stuff. And over the course of a couple years, over the course of a year, I took on a variety of different projects. And at first they were like pretty targeted to stuff I already knew and stuff I had already worked on. And then gradually they started kind of pulling me in on more stuff and saying, hey, would you be interested in this? Would you be interested in this? And eventually I think that they realized like, oh, hey, Julia is a person who is happy to learn new stuff, happy to take on challenging clients. So I'm now like I'm a 1099, but I'm the staff writer at the agency. And I mean, I kind of get the clients that are too difficult to give to one-off freelancers. So like I kind of get to choose. I was, at some point they asked me like, hey, would you want to work on this crypto thing? And I was like, no, not really. So I mean, I do get some input. And that first client that I was talking about is one where I did a few pieces for them. They really liked it. I was in some meetings with them. I really liked them. And so I've been able to say, hey, I really like working with them. Like I've got ideas. Can I take on more of that relationship? But yeah, I don't know.
So with
That's
the
awesome.
ideas, do they come in? Does the company come in with ideas, or they have like a general view defined?
We do our fly in here. Go away. Our principal consultant, when we onboard a new client, does a process that they call the developer content action plan. So they do like a developer content review where they say like, here are the gaps in your existing documentation. This is what developers want to see. These are your areas of strength. And we have kind of a rubric. And then they come up with an action plan based on that content gap analysis. So it's a collaborative process for sure. And the longer I've been with the agency, like the more I've been able to be involved in that process. Yeah. So it's a mix, right? Sometimes clients have wacky ideas about what they want. And then we have some clients who've been clients for a long time where we've moved past like that content gap. And it's more like, hey, we would love to have, this more kind of off the wall piece. Like I did a piece for Algolia around Black Friday last year that was like an instant inventory. It was like, how can you use Algolia to like manage your Black Friday sales? And they said, this is something we think will like kind of republish every year leading up to Black Friday.
That's awesome.
So, it's like that kind of thing where it's more like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Creative.
Yeah. That's fun. Okay. So you've really broken down a lot of the stuff that I was interested in hearing about, which is great. Like there are some really fun parts. There are some parts that are not so fun or kind of challenging. Is there any? So I would say it sounds like the part that you like the most is being able to learn new things, but it also seems pretty fun to be able to develop those deeper relationships with the clients too. Is
Absolutely. Yeah. And I like that I've been able to recently kind of develop these more in-depth relationships with clients. It's a mixed bag though, because the consultant client relationship is, as I'm sure you both know, not always the easiest relationship to navigate. And as a contractor with my agency, like I'm always kind of like a little on guard about like, oh my God, I'm not even an employee of this company exactly. Like if I say the wrong thing and like upset this client, like, it's my butt on the line. And our principal consultant is like an amazing guy, but it's just not it's not the same as like being part of the same team, like that manager relationship where like I don't know. There's always this like added level of stress in conversations with clients where I'm like, oh, I really hope I don't say that wrong. But I do like it. And I think that like whatever the next move is in my Careen, I want to have it be something where I have more depth, more depth in my relationships with people, but also like more depth in working with a more focused tech stack, because it does get pretty exhausting, like just bouncing from one thing to another and kind of feeling like I never work with any one thing long enough to really have any mastery. And like, I know I'm learning because when I come back to stuff later, like I can achieve more complex results and I can work faster and I can troubleshoot better. But like, I don't ever feel, I never exactly feel competent.
Yeah.
And that's kind of tough sometimes.
Yeah, I totally get that. I mean, like digging in all the way into something can feel good. I was going to make some joke about how that's like just being in JavaScript in general, where everything's always new and changing,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah. No, I
but,
know that's
but
like
then it's
absolutely an industry-wide phenomenon.
right. But still, I mean, I still have been doing React for like years, and it's like, I actually know it like pretty well, you know what I mean? And
Yeah, and
it
I
is
would say
nice to
like,
be able
it's
to
like,
get.
you know, earlier this spring, I was working on this kind of complicated .NET SQL thing, and then I'm working in Unity, and I have to learn Xcode and how to do iOS development, and also on the side, I'm working with GraphQL, and like, it's like, I mean, I really bounce around a lot. And occasionally they'll be like, do you know Angular? And I'm like, oh, the GraphQL client, we're all in agreement that the next deliverable is for me to do something in Flutter. And I'm like, oh, for Christ's sake.
Yeah,
Like,
I saw you mention that on Slack. I don't even know what Flutter is really. What is it?
it's a mobile framework. So it's like but it's
Like
so
JavaScript, but makes mobile
yeah,
apps?
yeah. But
I suppose I can look it up.
It seems like a React Native competitor. Am I wrong
it's a
about that?
React Native competitor. I can't remember what the big advantage is over React Native.
Well, I've heard a lot of React Native people say there's no advantage.
Well, React Native is really annoying. So if this is better, then I've just started my first React. I just started digging into React Native for the first time like a month or two ago, and
But
I'm
yeah,
still
it's
in
a
that. I'm
React
just
Native
mad at that
competitor,
phase.
and the idea is that like React Native, it's like device agnostic. Like it's not like writing an iOS app or
Write
anything,
once, publish anywhere kind of thing. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, starting from scratch in a like a big way like that is hard. I was just thinking in my head, I was just like outlining a blog post about like how I learned things, from scratch, and like the
Mhm.
bigger it is, like it's just like you were talking about the game app, right? Uh the further away from what you're used to it is, the harder it is. I mean, like that's an like obvious statement, but it's like it's much more for me. It's much more exhausting too, and it takes longer, but it's
Yeah,
also like harder. You know what I
yeah.
mean? Like it's not just a simple it just takes 2 days instead of half an hour if it's some package or whatever
Well,
to
it's
learn.
like, you know,
And it's hard sometimes.
we're all like, the idea that it's hard to estimate how long things will take is obviously a well-known phenomenon. But when you don't know anything,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
impossible to estimate. It's like,
Well, I
I
mean,
can
yeah,
probably roughly estimate how long it'll take me to like write something in Flutter, because I read about it and I was like, oh, okay, this is not radically different than anything I've done before. But
right.
with game development, it's like, oh, gee, like this is, there's just reams of files that I'm like, I have no idea what any of these do.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just, yeah, I'm a terrible jaw clencher. Like I just all day, every day. And over the last few months, as I've been working on this, like these few particularly difficult projects, I actually went to the dentist and I was like, you have to help me. Like, I'm going crazy. So that's why I now sugar-free Werther's Original. I'm like an 80-year-old diabetic. I suck on sugar-free Werther's Original all day because it keeps me from clenching my teeth.
That's interesting. My dentist sent me to my chiropractor to have my jaw adjusted. That is one of like the most awkward, uncomfortable adjustments that I have had. But I am also a jaw clencher, and it was causing my tooth to grow thickening roots that were starting to protrude in my gums.
Yeah. No, that's what I like. Yeah. Anyway, we don't need to get into my oral health.
You mentioned the, estimating and all that stuff. And I actually been wondering about this since you talked about it, especially since you're a contractor, how it works, what, like your arrangement. I mean, you get an assignment of writing an article about something that you don't know about yet. And so
Right.
like, how does that break down? What's the process of like, cause if I have a project, maybe I try to estimate it or something, and there's always unknowns, but with
Right.
writing assignments, lots of times there's other, it's per page. There's lots of different ways. And so is it just, you kind of treat it like a software project and estimate hourly and deliver a thing at the end?
The writing process doesn't really take me that much time. So like if I'm writing about something that I already understand really well, or just like a very simple API where I just want to show like very basic, like here's how to call it the first time. I know very well how long that'll take me. Like the writing process, it's like as I don't know. So one of the differences is when I was working before I kind of got brought in-house as a staff writer, then I was paid by piece, and it was a standard rate. And the pieces that I was getting were pretty standardized. At the point that it started getting more complex, where it was like, hey, stuff's coming back to me from the client, like asking me for a lot of revisions that like were not in scope, then it was like, can we have a conversation about changing how I'm compensated? Because this is not standard. Now, I'm paid a monthly retainer, and our project manager sort of, I communicate with her about like where I'm at on different stuff, and we kind of scale how much I take on just based on how long things are taking. So
nice.
Yeah. It's pretty flexible. They had expectations when I came on board as a staff writer that turned out to be like really wacky, but everybody realized it very quickly. Like I cannot produce 10 articles a month if I have to learn an entirely new framework for every single article.
I don't know if anybody can produce 10 articles a month. Like that's just a lot of
a lot of writing. I could do 10 if they're all just like
it's stuff you already know.
But 500 words on
that's cool.
Why you should have docs for your API. I'm good. I could write a lot of those. But it's I don't know. It's interesting though. I think I was talking about this with you recently, Bekah, like feeling kind of like I do think I'm underpaid maybe, because I think that the amount that I actually get done
Mhm.
is probably on par with somebody who's a full-time employee. But I'm paid as a part-time 1099 employee because I don't have this sort of like official role in the organization. Um, the upside is I have very few meetings, which I love. Um, but it's also harder to kind of I don't it's hard for me to really like figure out what like what my compensation should be because I don't really know how like my role compares to somebody who's in-house somewhere. Although I will say I interviewed for a role somewhere recently where they said something like, "Oh, our full-time braiders write about 4 articles a month." And I was like, "What?" Like, "Oh, okay. I could do that very easily." Like, um, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, I mean, yeah, it's got to be tough. But like I was thinking about this when you were talking about the like actual different articles that you were writing, and some of the thought processes you're explaining are complex things, right? That are targeted towards more senior developers, right? You're not being asked to write the like sort of super intro. I mean, maybe you are, but like
Yeah, on
lots of times you're not
occasion.
writing the super intro basic stuff or the SEO, fodder stuff, right? You're
No,
writing.
right, and that's something
Uh,
that we, like, as a company, we're like, "Listen, we'll, like, try to make the stuff that we write reasonably optimized
uh,
SEO-wise, but that's not what we're here for." Like, we're not here to, like, just create fluff content. Like, we want content that actually engages developers for the long term. And there is definitely like you have to be discoverable. And some of that is like identifying search terms that just have really low results volume. So, like, for example, just recently it was like we noticed that there's very few results for the search phrase JSON payload. And so we went to one of our clients and we're like, can we write something on this term? Like, it's relevant to you and like it's relevant to developers. People are searching for it and there's not that much content. But it's based on the idea that like people are searching for this because they want information, not like
mhm.
they're searching for it. And so like let's create the fluff. Um, I think so the principal consultant is he wrote a book called Developer Marketing Does Not Exist, which I think is kind of a goofy title. That was a face of recognition. Becca, do you know the book?
Yes,
Yeah.
I don't know who recommended it to me, but it's definitely on my list of books that I should read.
Yeah, he's and the idea is basically like if developers feel like they're being marketed to, like they're not going to nobody wants that. Like I want to know that a product is going to actually solve my problem. I want to know that like if I start using something, I'm going to be fully supported in my journey as a technical user. And so like the content that we're creating is really geared towards that developer experience of like, okay, great. You made it to our website. You signed up for your free trial account. Are you going to actually be able to get stuff done? And are you going to feel successful and empowered by the content that you find here? Or are you going to feel like you're being, you know, told exactly how to do it? And if you want to do anything different, you have absolutely no idea how to make it work. Yeah, I can't remember what you said that made me just launch into that, but
Oh, I was just talking about I was talking about how the content you're writing is talking about high level concepts, and
Oh yeah. Like
it was mostly just like you're operating on like a senior developer level, and you were talking about compensation before, and that's what made me start
yeah.
talking about this,
Yeah.
but like the
And then that's
the
the part of the hard thing for me is like I really genuinely love what I do, and that actually makes it harder for me to like fight for the compensation.
yeah,
I also have a
yeah,
really
I hear
hard
that.
time with the fact that right now, like I work from 10 to 3 roughly. Sometimes I work a little in the evenings. Sometimes I get started a little earlier in the morning, but like I really only work like 20, 25 hours a week.
Yeah.
And I know that like taking a full-time job, like the difference, that additional 10 to 15 hours a week is just going to be meetings and like
Yes.
annoying emails. And like, am I willing to take less money to not deal with that stuff? Like, and have the flexibility in my schedule?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I guess
I mean, if
I
you
am.
really, really wanted or needed more money, you could pick up more clients too. Like that's the beauty of being independent. You can
Yeah, it's true.
do what you
It's
want.
true. I could. And I do, I toy with that. But
Or just raise your rates, it's all
yeah,
good. Send them an email,
yeah,
they'll be fine.
yeah, it's true. I have such anxiety about. I think I better deliver a couple of successful projects on these 2 nightmare clients before I ask for.
Yes. Say, now that I am a game developer, this is my new rate.
Because we all know game developers are paid.
Now that I'm a Flutter developer,
Well,
this is my new rate.
developers are like hideously underpaid.
Well,
But that's
now that I
An Angular developer.
I'll write it for you. To whom it
Well,
may concern.
yeah.
I
It is
know.
interesting. I mean, the whole game development world is like its own.
I don't know anything about it. Yeah. So far separated from it is weird, like, you think about it, because I get a lot of overlap. I mean, obviously most of my overlap is with other web developers in different technologies, but even so, I don't know anybody that does game development, it's like, and I know a lot of developers.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I've lived in Seattle for 17 years. Like I know people at so many different tech companies. I know recruiters all over the place. And at one point, somebody had expressed an interest in working for a game company. And I was like, well, I'll reach out. But like, it was like, one person was like, well, I know the VP of HR at Wizards of the Coast, but that's about as close as I can get. I'm like, well, I don't think that's quite what we're looking for. But
Well, Julia, this has been a really great conversation, and but it is time to wrap it up.
yes.
So, is there
Yes.
any last words of wisdom you have for our listeners, or things you want them to, you think they would benefit from learning about?
I don't. I was talking with David Alpert a couple weeks ago, and we were talking about the idea that like it was after I gave the lunch and learn about feedback. And we were talking about the idea that like giving feedback, being a mentor of some kind, formal or informal, is sort of an intrinsic part of your responsibility in the tech industry. And I think it's something I think about a fair amount, that like, I don't necessarily have like a huge wealth of technical experience. I haven't been in the industry that long, but I think it's just really important for everybody to remember that like you have valuable experience and knowledge and skills and insight, and all of us are always learning, and we should all always be teaching as well. And that's not like to say that you need to be, giving formal instruction on something, but that like we all benefit from people sharing what they know, sharing their perspectives. You may not be an expert in anything, but you're an expert in being yourself, right? And it's like I talking with somebody who has a lot of experience in like tech support, and I was like, listen, you may not think of yourself this way, but you are a UX expert. Like, you know more about actual user experience than like almost anybody. If you've worked in tech support for 3 years or whatever, like you have so much hands-on knowledge and insight into how people use technology. Share that. Like, but also like before you can share it, you have to actually reflect on it and try to like give it some framework. And I think that that's something I've really been trying to do myself, is like, I know that I know things. How can I put them in a framework that allows me to share them with other people? So yeah, we're all always learning. We also should all always be teaching. And I think that's, I don't know. Yeah.
I love that. That's so great. And what a great way to end this episode. So thanks so much, Julia, for being with us. We had a great time today.
Absolutely. My
Thanks,
pleasure.
Julia. Also, I looked that up, and the most expensive precious metal is rhodium. So if you are going that direction, rhodium is going to be where you're going. I've never heard of it before.
Rhodium. Well,
But
I know
you
that
use it.
rhodium
All right, Joe.
jewelry is rhodium plated.
Yeah.
That's because
What
it's
else?
fancy. I don't know.
Fact checker here. I don't believe you.
It's used for it's very reflective, so it's used in searchlights, mirrors, and jewelry. I think it's mostly just that it's rare. I don't know. Anyway, that's it.
Yeah.
That's all I got.
Good.
All right. Cool. Well, thank you, Julia.
Great way to end this episode. Julia did such a great job.
Well, I had the tab open from before, and then I forgot about it. No, I didn't want to.
What is sublimation?
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Julia.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Virtual Coffee Podcast. This episode was produced by Dan Ott and Bekah Hara-Weigel. If you have questions or comments, you can hit us up on Twitter at virtualcoffee.io or email us at podcast@virtualcoffee.io. You can find the show notes, sign up for the newsletter, check out any of our other resources on our website, virtualcoffee.io. If you're interested in sponsoring Virtual Coffee, you can find out more information on our website at virtualcoffee.io/sponsorship. Please subscribe to our podcast and be sure to leave us a review. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.